What's up guys, it's Alex here, your friendly reef dog, and today I'm going to show you around my tank, which has now been up and running for 12 months. Now 1 year is a great landmark, so I wanted to take the opportunity to show you guys what you can expect a reef aquarium to look like after a year. Now before we get into the video, if you're new to the channel, I put out a video like this every Friday at 4 PM UK time, which is 10 AM Central Time. So if you love reefing videos, have a think about subscribing. Right, let's get to the tank. So today I'm going to show you how my tank has changed in 12 months, tell you about some of my favourite corals and fish, and show you some of the growth I've been getting. As well as that, I'll tell you what I'm going to do in the future to make the tank even better. I'm also going to tell you what my parameters are and show you how the sump has developed. And finally, I'll tell you how I've achieved the good bits, and I'll show you the things I've got wrong that have led to bad things. So let's start with the tank then. This is it at day 1, more or less empty save for a few fish and corals. I set the tank up with all dry rock plus a very small amount of live rock from my previous system. I added bacteria in a bottle by way of ATM colony. That is often seen as a dangerous way to set up a tank, so let's see how things are looking a year on. Well, since then I've added 25 new fish and over 70 additional corals, and I think it's fair to say the tank is showing no ill effects as a result of me not taking things slowly. I've never had any nuisance algae in my tank, and the livestock is all generally very healthy. Now I'm not saying this is the best way to set up a tank. I did have problems with my SPS early on that I've talked about before, and it helps that I've set up and run a few tanks before, so I know how to recognise and tackle problems. All I would say is that, while taking things slowly is almost always the best practice, it is entirely possible to have a successful tank set up with dry rock and bottled bacteria. And I'll tell you more about how to do that later in the video when I show you my sump. So what about the best of my livestock then? Well, there's a lot to choose from, and there are only a few corals I'm not entirely happy with. But I do have some that I think are particularly special. LPS wise, the first headliner is a John Deere Leptostraea with its furry little green polyps and yellow base. This has grown really well in the 11 months I've had it, and it's shown no signs of trouble at any point. It also has the nice bonus of looking awesome when its polyps are retracted. Then there's the Jack-o'-lantern Leptoceris. You don't get many orange corals, so this adds a little variety. It has fluoro green eyes and some stunning contours that look fantastic close up. And I do have a couple of acans that are pretty awesome too, although it's quite difficult to get a proper angle showing their rainbow colours, so you'll have to take my word for it to a point. These guys are doing well near the bottom of the tank with low light and flow. Now I'd like to show you my rockflower anemone garden next, but two of my favourites decided they wanted more shade, so they are now more or less out of sight. And before we move on to my best SPS corals, have a look at how massive my zoocock is now. About 18 months ago I bought 2 polyps of these zoas for £40, and I now have hundreds of them. Aside from the fact that I really like the way these zoas look, they've also become home to my Da Vinci clownfish. And while you can't beat clowns hosting an anemone, it's still awesome to have a symbiotic relationship between corals and fish. Now I do have quite a few Aquapora frags, as you'd expect, and here's a selection of my favourites. I don't know all of their names, with the exception of the main one, the Jason Fox Kryptonite, but they are all bangers, and it's not hard to see why so many people love Aquapora so much. But some of my favourite SPS corals are actually Montipora. They're easier to keep than Aquapora, are happy in lower light, and have some really stunning colours. At the moment my 2 Montipora paloenensis corals aren't showing their very best colours, but I see that as a challenge, and I'm going to enjoy trying to make them look a little bit more like this. It might take me a bit of time, but I will get there. Now the corals in this tank are only half the story. From the start I wanted to have a thriving reef with fish everywhere, and that means having free swimmers as well as more secretive rock dwellers. Perhaps my favourite are the shoal of 9 longfin antheas. They're proving a really easy to keep schooling fish. I've had no aggression or trouble with getting them to eat, so if you're looking for a school of fish, I'd thoroughly recommend these guys. And of the many wrasses I have, my earmuff is the standout. He's got an awesome war-painted face and a pinkish body leading to a bright pink tail. And being a Halichoeres wrasse, he's active, sociable, and is great for pest control. But the real centrepiece of the tank is my Australian Harlequin tuskfish. This is the only fish I've bought that isn't truly reef safe, and I took the risk because he's just so damn stunning. He won't do damage to any corals, but he is a risk to inverts. More on that later. Now it's been a while since I've shown you around my sump and things have changed. About a month ago I removed the Red Sea filter socks and replaced them with an automatic filter roller. It's an Inhabitants X Filter 1.0 and it is absolutely fantastic. It's the primary reason my water is so clear and I wish I'd bought it months ago. Aside from that, I've also changed my algae lamp to an LED unit and the growth since then has been staggering. Although I like to keep my filtration simple, I do like as much filtration as possible to allow me to keep as many fish as possible. The keen-eyed among you will also have noticed that the stock auto top-off reservoir is nowhere to be seen. For me, it's too small and takes up space in the sump, so I've replaced it with a large glass tank I keep down the side. I've actually only installed this in the last few days, but I'm expecting it to make my life easier and reduce the frequency with which I have to top up the freshwater reservoir. So what about my parameters then? I use ATI Essentials Pro to maintain calcium and alkalinity. I keep my alkalinity at around 8.4 and calcium at around 420. I dose 3.5 millilitres of ATI iodine per week and I'm just starting to look into other trace elements to help improve my SPS colours. My nitrates are around 5 parts per million and my phosphate is around 0.08, although that's been closer to 0.03 for the majority of the time. So how have I achieved my successes then? As I mentioned, I started the tank with real reef rock and bottled bacteria. Many people say real reef rock isn't as porous as live rock and therefore isn't as good for filtration. And I think that's probably right, so I've added a few bags of Cyperax in my sump. Its sole purpose is to add surface area for bacteria to proliferate, which will make up for any deficiencies in the real reef rock I use. And that, in addition to my large skimmer, algae bed and filter roller, are key contributors in keeping my nutrients under control and in keeping undesirable algae at bay. Although when it comes to undesirable algae, you need cure as well as prevention, and I've had a rabbitfish in this tank almost from day one. He's an absolute lawnmower and rips off any algae the second he sees it. The one-spot foxface is also supposedly one of the smaller rabbitfish, so with a bit of luck, he won't ever outgrow the tank. I also do fortnightly water changes of around 10%. I tried to go for no water changes as per the ATI Essentials guide, but I found that's when I was having problems with my SPS and that those problems went away when I started doing water changes. So I would personally always recommend water changes as part of your nutrient control and trace element replacement, particularly in the first 12 months of a tank. Aside from that, what has worked for me with the corals is keeping alkalinity and calcium as stable as possible and blanketing the corals with nice even light using T5s to supplement my LEDs, while also throwing as much flow at them as I possibly can. But of course not everything has gone swimmingly, so now I'll tell you about what I've got wrong with my tank. While the tuskfish is an absolute stunner, he is very much a shrimp eater. And after being in the tank for 2 weeks, he attacked and killed my clean shrimp right in front of me. Watching this happen at the time was pretty upsetting, to be honest, as it was caused by a risk I'd taken that didn't pay off. And although I haven't seen him eat anything since, it's been months since I saw or heard my pistol shrimp, so I'm guessing he went the way of the tusk too. Now I'm a keen believer that you should take some risk with fish in order to get some real stunners, but this is a sobering reminder that those risks don't always pay off, and if someone says a fish is a risk with corals or inverts, they're probably right. I've also lost a Maxima clam that almost certainly wasn't getting enough light, and an octospawn coral that might have been getting too much light. And one of my most expensive Aquapora colonies is currently stripping and dying for no apparent reason. Now this was a wild caught colony, and I found that my aquacultured homegrown frags have done much better. But as well as the Aquapora dying, some of my SPS aren't showing great colours. This coral is a prime example of that. It was bright pink when I got it, but is now faded and looking sad, albeit still growing. Now I wonder if trace elements might be part of the reason it's not looking great, so I'll see how my experiment goes with that. All in all though, my problems have been few and far between, and it feels like the tank is on an upward trajectory. I still have plenty more real estate for corals, and I'm trying to focus solely on high-end stuff from now on. And while I have 27 fish in total, I've still got room for some more. As long as there's enough hiding space and you don't have aggressive fish, and of course as long as you're on top of your bioload, you'd be surprised at how many fish you can have in a tank. So I want to get myself a tang and an angelfish, and I'm toying with the idea of adding a second flame hawkfish in the hope that they pair up. So watch this space to see how that goes. So there you have it then, that's what my tank looks like after 1 year of running. Now I've probably gone a little bit quicker than most people, so you might not find this as exactly an average, but it's probably a fair representation. If you enjoyed the video then, give me a thumbs up and subscribe for future content, and in the meantime check out some of my other videos, and until next time, happy reefing.